need to thank first time that we were met at this location, and we're going to be, this is our location for at least the next 12 months to meet here with the wonderful access to parking and even shaded parking, no less. But we need to say, I'll say thank you for you to Cross Bank for allowing this. I'm told that we have a worldwide outage here. That is, we have folks watching on Zoom from Newfoundland, from Honolulu, not Honduras, but Honolulu, and Ridge Oak Drive. The trip that we're going to talk about is a wonderful trip that took place back in April of this year. And it was called a spring flower tour or whatever else we want to do. The names up there are the CCB members who were on that trip. In addition to that, Carol and Carol Kane were on the trip and were nice enough to come add their thoughts to it. Carol Bowes is not, but there was 8 Austinites to go, but with 5 of whom were CCB members. The Netherlands, obviously you've heard of, and Belgium, but not in the context we're about to show you. Let's go to the first slide here. Sorry that we never could locate the laser printer. This gives you some sense of where we're talking about right here. That is the small countries. And I think the thing I want you to take away from that you already knew, of course, is this is Europe. No wonder they've had the 100 Years' War and the 30 Years' War and the War of the Roses, and that was England, of course. But the whole point being, they were just on top of each other. So when one group fought, and they had some good names. The really good guy in the Netherlands was actually called William the Good. That was probably self-named. I'm not sure about that, but I think you can see a little more in context. Now, the challenge, and this is a challenge, is what is this country? Okay, so here's the Netherlands, Belgium. What is this?
Germany.
Germany, right. Okay, so what is this country?
France.
France, okay. Oops. What is this country?
Germany.
No, this is Germany. What one is up here?
Switzerland. Austria.
Back to, no, let's call it, Switzerland is right here.
Czech Republic.
Well, yes, you could look over here. Check it. So see how much you've already learned in this minute moment, or not learned, as the case may be. But anyway, to give you some sense of what these areas are called or referred to as the Low Country. Why would that be? Any thoughts about why it's nicknamed the Low Countries? Well, we'll talk as we go. These are river deltas in essence. That's why, particularly the Netherlands more than Belgium. But this is where 3 major rivers in Europe into the North Sea, and it all comes together there. So logically, it's going to be somewhere close to sea level. Go ahead to the next. This is a picture. We traveled by boat with a nice travel group, but this is the top. If you can see 1, 2. I think you can read the Amsterdam. This is mostly the way the boat did. We didn't do all of this. We didn't pay enough money, obviously, but to do the whole trip. But this is a trip through, beginning in the Netherlands and ending right here.
In Belgium.
In Belgium. Almost my favorite city, in addition to Amsterdam, was Antwerp, Belgium. Any favorite cities that those who were on the trip had? Or just everything? We're not, don't count the tulip gardens. That's off limits.
The little Bruges.
Bruges. Okay, it's a medieval type town that is continuing to be. But this gives you some idea of a 8-day trip as we went through this. Now we'll go on to the next, please. Okay, this is Amsterdam. Amsterdam is doing very well right now. Amsterdam's population is a little smaller than Austin. It's 950 or something thousand folks in there. Amsterdam really came into play in the 1600s. By that, I mean, it's when they built canals. You'd think you were in Austin today. All the growth. Built canals. They were encouraging people to bring narrow 2-story houses. It became known as the city with the tall houses kind of thing. This is one of the canals. Those are obviously what,
Houseboat,
and do people live in them?
yes.
That's right. And how expensive are they? I have no idea.
But their rent for where they dock it is, they say, very expensive.
Right. This is the background up against this. And the thing, well, these are just all examples of the local architecture. But back to what I was saying, it came into its height in the 1600s. That's when they were building all of this stuff. Their international trade through the harbor of Amsterdam was at its height. Because remember, something called colonization, you know, and all the stuff coming out of Africa, etc. And it was just a blowing and going town, and it should have been until 1672, they went to war with England. And we don't have it up there to show, but there's a pretty narrow entry, and all the English had to do was just stand at the harbor gate. Mark,
Who took this picture and what camera took it?
I don't have the front. Well, I'm sure it was
It's
a.
beautiful.
I mean,
I took it from a hotel and I was looking across the,
And it was with an iPhone.
iPhone,
that is a great picture.
Yeah.
iPhone 10.
I have a question.
Sure,
When, didn't they used to call this Holland? Or-
it did. Yeah, a good question. Okay, the Netherlands, Holland. Actually, Holland represents about 3 of the states within what's now the Netherlands.
Oh,
So the reason it's continued that, because it sometime was called Holland, but it's now, the Netherlands is the preferred term, because that extends to it's kind of like saying England versus the United Kingdom.
And you have the lower, is it the lower? and the upper?
Well, we get to that. Yeah, that has to do with more Belgium than anything. So this is Amsterdam. This is Amsterdam in 2024. So we've talked about this. Go to the next, and I think there's aha. Okay, you can break it out, fix. Does that sound American, or what do you think sounds? Anybody, can I sell you this little car here? Don't have any volunteers, but that was one, this was actually parked on the edge of the park. And this is the housing that is actually across from where this car is parked. And you can see the bicycles and the bicycles and the bicycles there. And you will have bicycles across the street here anchored to the fences there, and things like that. So it is a dense city because there's just a very limited, if you think Austin has a limitation on where you build new houses, try Amsterdam.
And you
That
don't.
little car is parked vertically, where everything else is parked horizontally.
Well, and
That
it's,
might be an advantage.
yes, and then so you can also see, and you can see it's a very short car. It is a little car, as you suggest.
And you do not get in the way of the bicycles.
Right.
They have their lane and you don't. You don't get in there.
Their lane is wherever they are.
Those of you who might not have heard, Carl said that the bicycle's lane is wherever they are. It has no relationship to your rights at all. Okay, but just a better feel of that. This is modern Amsterdam, but back to Amsterdam in the 1600s. So they've got trade going, they've got building canals, and some guy named Rembrandt was beginning to, and some guy named Van Gogh was later, but Rembrandt and a couple other pictures we'll see. Rembrandt lived essentially throughout the 1600s. His early work that I'll show you here is 1632. In fact, why don't you go on to the next? Aha, people almost read there. Okay, this mostly represents the people who are in this room.
The canes were somewhere, I know, we were
Okay.
waiting for the canes.
Well, I'll let them.
it was chilly. You got
But
toasted.
seriously, any idea, if you didn't see the sign there, if you just looked at here, both of these are Van Gogh's self-portraits. And they are changing backgrounds is the reason these people haven't changed, but that has. Van Gogh, we all know of, as part of the post-impressionist time. He really came to his distinction, and there are probably some art people who know what that is, his use of bright colors and his bold brush strokes. As you know, he had major mental health problems throughout his life, and he took his own life at age 40-something. But the whole point I was going to make is he only started painting this prolific amount of paintings the last 5 years of his life. And at the time he died, none of his paintings had ever sold.
Wow.
Now, they are regarded as the most expensive artist you can get an original of in the current market.
Tom, why did the painting change behind you?
That's because the people who run the museum just want to show the different self-portraits of.
So they just, while you were sitting there?
Yes.
Yes, it automatically just keeps
It's an AV
changing.
view, you know, a TV screen, basically.
Oh, and that's in the lobby of the museum. I get it.
Yeah, good. Glad you asked the question. But you can see that the different, again, self-portrait, how close to that was to reality, I don't have any idea.
Are the originals that size or is this?
No.
No.
Yeah.
He did some really big ones, but those are just blown up to make us look small. Okay, next.
Oh, that's what I was.
All right. Anybody know the name of this Van Gogh piece?
Sunflower.
Right. Correct, it is sunflowers. This one has an interesting name that most of you may not know, but could guess. And those of us on the tour didn't have a clue what it was. It's called the Roots.
Oh,
And what is this called?
Meredith.
Meredith is our hot hidden source here.
Right.
I think it's crows in a field or
Crows
something.
in a field, even though you can't
What?
see them there.
Crows.
Crows in a field, that's field is that. But this is this is a Van Gogh, this is
Oh, right,
one
yeah.
of his more famous ones. But it's these just bright colors and things that come out. Go on to the next.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, in Amsterdam, there's the Van Gogh Museum that I've just elaborated on. In Amsterdam, there's, how do you pronounce that, Vicki?
Remember,
Yeah, which is a huge museum that it has everything. But a couple of the prominent painters there, and again, we're talking the 1600 to 1699, right? Or Rembrandt, this is a Rembrandt, the name of it is the Dutch Masters. And what he apparently tried to do was to paint all of the artists of his time, in essence. That's my understanding, anyway. But that's called the Dutch Masters, and obviously a representative of that. Much more of interest to Harold and I is the next
we could have them.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, it's called the Autopsy Suite. But seriously, what's so remarkable, whether it's this was a painting that was done on request or on, what do you say when you pay
Commission.
money for it?
Commission.
Commission, thank you. When you commission for it to hang in the surgical suite at someplace. But a couple things, to get your picture here, you had to pay the artist some. So I don't know how much these pictures cost each pair, but, and they, once a year, they would have these public displays, and this was a prisoner who died for whatever reason he died. But the remarkable thing is really the detail here of the form, the dissection. Is this, remember, this is 1632. This is not like, Grey's Anatomy. I'm sorry. Physicians, Grey's Anatomy was our Bible book. Grey's Anatomy was not a TV program. We first started in the
Well,
world.
at some point before this, weren't dissection thought to be against God
Yes.
or something?
And Michelangelo did that too, but, on the slide, but
To find out
to
what was
find out
going
how
on.
the body was built.
Yeah.
So again, this is one of Rembrandt's early jobs for this surgeon, these details. Does anybody have a favorite, as Tom does, Rembrandt pictured?
I like, there's one with the skull,
Of the what?
was it Aristotle looking at a skull? Something like that.
Is that a Rembrandt? Yes. Mine is The Return of the Prodigal.
Oh.
Remember that, it's sort of pretty famous, particularly if you're a Methodist church type. But it, has the son coming back, has the father greeting him, and has the elder son in the background with his different facial expressions, and books have been read about interpretation of that, but everybody has their own approach. But this is one of Rembrandt's early ones. Next. Now, this is a couple. Now, when I say a couple, and those of you on the tour, why didn't they put them together? The idea as expressed by the guide was that it was such a high mortality in that era that it was not uncommon if you painted them together, one partner would die. And so then you had this picture that you didn't want to hang your thing with your second wife.
That's interesting.
But that was the explanation that why a lot of these were painted separately because of the fact that it was not with a high death rate in that era. Because again, we're in the 1600s.
Are these still Libby's photographs?
But these ones,
No,
That's
these are some of.
no, this is again, it wasn't by Rembrandt, but this is the 1600s paintings.
No,
I
but the
think
photograph.
that's his photograph.
Your photograph?
That's your, I think that,
They're great.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
They're-
Yeah.
yeah,
they're forward,
I'm
Libby.
sorry, I
It's a
didn't-
good photograph.
the phone, I thought that's a beautiful job. The ones before with Van Gogh, those were mine, just snapping.
Right. Go ahead.
Oh,
This is right.
famous.
Okay, and the same thing, now, somebody other than me will have to explain why this has become famous. Vermeer, again, was a Dutch painter of the 1600s, and this is a mega famous print for reasons I know not.
I made a movie of it too.
Who did that?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, there is a
A
movie,
movie, a book and a movie.
Probably the book spawned the movie. Yeah.
and that picture is very small. It's not a huge picture.
Good point, yeah, very good.
It's in a different museum.
Yeah, well, I didn't
But-
want to tell them.
Okay.
Come on.
Sorry.
When you try to put it all together, you try to make it less complicated.
And some of us also went to the Anne Frank house in Amsterdam, but you cannot take photographs there. And so that was one of we went a couple of days early so that we could go to the Van Gogh Museum in the Anne Frank house.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit, we'd like you to elaborate on some of that. At the very end, we'll talk about Amsterdam during World War II. But anyway, so you'll go learn and you'll be much important. Go ahead.
Well, you were gonna tell us why the painting is so famous. Does it have something to do with?
No, I wasn't, I don't remember.
He was hoping to have someone else.
And so far, the rest of our travel group hasn't remembered either. Right, as Vicki said, it's a very small, discrete painting, and the author is, the creator is Vermeer. Again, we're talking about, all this has been going since the 1650s.
Can I do
Okay.
a quick,
Beautiful picture.
can I do a quick check-in with the folks online, make sure you can all still hear and
Sure.
see everything? Thumbs up? Or if you have any questions?
No, it's coming through loud and clear.
Great.
Okay. The advertised, the talk was, of course, tulips. And this is our travel, we were with a group of 100 on the travel, but these are the folks, and most of them are in the room here at this point, except Carol. This is the name of the gardens, Keukenhof Gardens. And I think Harold made this picture, somebody. But anyway, the point is, this happens to be the 75th anniversary of the gardens. And before I show you what I hope will be awesome pictures, the concept here is that tulips have been around since the Middle Ages. Most of them were in Southern Europe, extended over into Asia, but they were introduced into Holland, into the Netherlands area, into Holland, just a couple hundred years ago. And so, but they have truly been adopted. Now, I don't know whether this is from a press release or what, but supposedly tulips, this is from the site of the Curtain of Bell. Tulips means perfect and deep love. Yes, you're supposed to say,
Oh.
but seriously, so they have taken off. The gardens were, obviously, if you can add and subtract, gardens were first created in 1950 by about 20 tulip bulb growers, wholesalers, retailers, to create this garden. Now, the thing that you have to remember that it took me a while to understand, the garden is only open from mid-March to mid-May, because this is a spring flower. And although they plant them to come in and, reach their highlights at different times, we were there in mid-April. But this is a spring tulip garden, because that's when tulips are on the thing.
And we were lucky enough to be there at its peak. And you never know when it's gonna be, but
With a beautiful day.
Yes, it was a gorgeous,
Uh-huh.
gorgeous
Pretty
day.
big.
Yeah,
And
you'll
it's a
see some
huge
of them look
place.
a little later, some wind blown. But remember that the Netherlands is on the same latitude as Toronto. So it was
Well-
spring too. Go ahead.
Rick has a question.
In
I was just
English,
gonna
go ahead.
comment, they double the blooming season by planting 2 bulbs for every one upside down and one right side up. So the right side up one grows and blooms, and the one that's planted upside down grows upside down for a couple of weeks and then kind of realizes it's underground and turns around and comes up. And so it blooms right after the first bulb.
Thank you, Rick. But now there are at least 100 growers that contribute to this. They spend the rest of the year recreating what you're about to see. But it is the perspective, this is truly a spring garden tour. Going to the next. Anybody ever seen that many different
It looks
tulips?
unreal. It's like paintings.
Yeah, it took us a half a day. It's a large park to walk through, and every type of tulip, ones you've never seen before, like the fluffy ones. They also had daffodils and narcissus in areas too. It was just absolutely breathtaking, I thought.
Are these photographs you made?
On my iPhone.
Well, my iPhone too.
Yeah.
Yes, they were all iPhone pictures. The pictures you see are a combination from all the travelers they made. But a couple.
That's what I meant when I said you.
Sure. Yeah,
Right.
no, this amazingly so. And just, you can see if they come across this well, how in person you just find it overwhelming. But there's 70 basic types of tulips, or
70?
Variety.
yes.
Well,
But then that doesn't include all the hybrids, because obviously to get something like that is going to be some kind of a hybrid. But the world started with basically 70. What's the word I'm looking for? But varieties, thank you. Yeah, varieties. And then they crossbreed, they do everything else here. These are just laid out in front of you as you walk. You may at some point doubt that these are actually tulips. You start to say, wow. But then if you look at the plant itself, it's clearly a tulip plant. Find your way. Next slide.
it was my favorite little daffodil there. And
Yeah, the daffodils are a prominent part of it, but they're kind of like the little sister that doesn't come out of the closet or something, compared to these other things.
Well, are there any tulips that have a fragrance?
Almost none. Yeah, rarely does, according to what I've read, I haven't sampled the vast number of them like Mark has. Question?
Are you gonna talk about the tulip financial bubble?
I mean, tulip mania,
Right.
well, in a moment. I don't know a lot about it.
Yeah.
Go ahead, the next.
Someone needs to make some puzzles out of these.
Yeah, that one on the right. needs a
Oh,
puzzle.
that's too hard.
Absolutely.
Yes, for those of you on, okay,
thinking about
does
what-
anybody recognize that as a worldwide, is that
Pretty
that
awesome.
upper, the
Can have-
cow is a fundraiser worldwide? I know they've had those in Chicago where you sell them. I think they've done it some here.
Yeah.
I guess it's a guitar. But what Mark was referring to, and I don't know much about it, but there was a period of time where it was called tulip mania. And elaborate on it.
Well, it was like the stock market. It was tulips became worth tens, hundreds,
I like cryptocurrency.
yeah, like crypto, millions of dollars. I mean, it was just, and then it burst, and everything went to pot, but it was just.
Yeah, the terminology was tulip mania, but I don't
Right,
know
right.
any. So, how do you like this variety? And these, of course, are all hand planted. They're just as you go. Now, I'm gonna let you look. I want you to find a black, as we go through all these, a black tulip. Okay, next. And red is such a dominant color. I just love however they came out with purple, whether that's
Yeah.
natural or crossbreed, I don't know. But again, as everybody's expressed, and then you can see that how the tulip itself,
As that yellow.
say again,
The edges are yellow.
The edge of the yellow and with the red.
Right, it's like a,
Yeah, like a little trim. Oh, that'd make a wonderful poster.
Is there a black tulip?
this, I mean, there's so many, you could make, say, hey, this is my favorite picture, but this is one of my favorites, because you've got this, you've got this, you've got all the colors in the background, and I don't know why somebody took, there's a power, was that a power line, Harold?
It might have been, yeah.
There's probably was a fence that I wasn't supposed to cross, but just, that's tulips at their height. Next.
Oh,
Speaking of tulips at their height, maybe you want to explain what in the world this is?
Well, I took this from, they have a big windmill that you could go up, and I took this and this, they grow them in fields, like you can see the red, you see the yellow back there also. They harvest these and they will go and just chop them off and are harvesting the bulbs. And it seems like such a waste to me, but they do, they say they just chop them off and they're harvesting for the bulbs to,
Yeah, this is
Send
the
all over
bulb,
the
yeah,
world.
this is production of bulbs.
wow. Well, no, this is the canal right here at the bottom.
Uh-huh.
Is that how they transport some of this, is by that canal?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Oh,
No.
Yeah, this, the tour guide didn't tell us. But no, there are canals throughout as you drive from Amsterdam here, just throughout.
Okay.
But I don't know the answer to your appropriate question. Next. So, we've now exhausted ourselves with the tulips, and we can replay these at the end, but the second most famous thing, well, probably the first most famous thing in the Netherlands is what?
window.
Sure. This is Carol Bowes, who was one of our group, travelers. I think, is she the only one that did the bicycle part, I think?
Yeah.
But at any rate,
They had 19 windmills from the 16th century in this little area.
yeah, this is a UNESCO site. They moved, they weren't all, put together right there, but there's go on to the next, and I think there's a little more explanation. Okay.
There are three that we saw three different types of windmills. The one to the left was the first type built. They call it a bobblehead. But it was top heavy and not stable in high winds, but it was easy to rotate, when the winds changed.
But remember, these things rotate 360 as the winds change, just like, say, a windmill that you see in Texas do.
The men who service or whatever, operate them can go in and move them around.
Right, or they can, right. So bobblehead number one, the oldest branch.
And
They
the
came
second
across
one was,
one that,
it's
go
made
ahead.
out of brick.
See, the sides is what she's talking about out of brick right here.
And it was heavy and tended to sink because,
Remember
not
where
real
you are,
solid
you're
ground.
in the Netherlands.
And we did tour one that they had as a museum. And the one on the right is octagon shaped and thatched.
Okay.
And that was the third type built. And they had all three of those in this area.
So is the last one the most recent one? I mean,
That's-
That's
yeah,
what you
that's what
find
they were
more
told.
of, that one? Because it's
Right.
lighter?
Almost all of the pumping now is just done by electric motors.
Oh.
This is a joy of the past. Going to the next, we'll show you a little more interior. Okay, here's just another view there. I want to point out, because I'll point out more, see, looks like fencing there on the end of those. There. This is the inside. In other words, is that whirls, this is the inside, just like whether you were doing a grist mill, it was water run, or with this. What were they trying to accomplish, Carl? What was the purpose of these multiple windmill
Well,
mills?
there were two. One is they did in fact windmill. It was to mill grain. But the primary use, I think, was in fact to move water. And they have all these canals, but they have very large areas to irrigate. And so they would pump water from the canal up to another area to basically make a large reservoir. And then they would have windmills up there and they would pump it up to the next. And as there was a change in elevation of the area, they could continue to expand the area that they could use for more agriculture or flowers or whatever, by moving the water using the power of the windmill. To me, there were three things that were really into me about the windmill. One is that's what they were using for, was they did use it to pump water out of the ground in some places, but here, that wasn't an issue. Here it was really moving it. Two is all the gear mechanism was all wood. I mean, it just kind of, it was extraordinary to me that they could make that happen with wood and not break the pins off of them or whatever, and
This is the 1700s we're talking about, early
Yeah.
1800s.
And the third is this whole concept of moving that entire head, including the windmill portion itself. You see that big thing looks like a ship's wheel
Yeah.
down toward the bottom.
Mhm,
with
yeah.
white. That's what they move it with. It's chained in place wherever they decide they need it. Then when the wind shifts and they move it, then they release the chains. They turn that thing, which cranks it around and where it's facing the wind, and then they chain it back down again. And they do that sometimes 2 or 3 times a day. I mean, it's a big deal. And it's all manual, so.
And that's,
Anyway,
that's fresh water?
it's fresh water.
Oh, this is all fresh water. So the components there, and I don't have the pointer, but I want you to pay attention again to the to the fencing that's there. Because obviously the wind blows a lot sometimes and not so much sometimes. So you may need to try to catch more. Next picture. Okay, what's different about this?
Got a cover on it.
Yeah, in other words, that's how you control how fast you're in it with a given wind speed that you need. They just have these covers roll out over that netting or over that fencing. And that helps control how rapidly it turns. So obviously you can burn them out in those instances. So this is a picture from the inside of one of those, looking through the window at the adjacent one. Remember, these weren't arranged like this. These were all brought together at the UNESCO site. So don't, because I had a hard time visualizing, well, what in the world are they doing all this stuff right here? But this is brought together in we'll call it a park-like setting.
What was the most recently built?
We were told the thatched, octagon thatched one was the most
17th century.
probably, because the earlier ones were the 16th century, the bobblehead, but, and we were able to go in this one. And they have living quarters in there and beds and the kitchen, whatever, because people live there.
The answer is
like a lighthouse.
they were built up until electricity came along. Well, I guess the steam engine might have, but basically until electricity replaced them.
Actually, Tom, if you Google windmill, which I did for curiosity, you can buy windmills at Tractor Supply now.
Well, the only windmill company in the US, I mean, not these kind of windmills, but Texas kind of windmills, is in San Angelo. And go out and look at it or whatever, and you can see where there's never been a wind vane on a windmill in Texas that didn't have hot holes in it from the chute being shot.
Did you say this was a UNESCO site? Is that?
Yes, now.
Okay.
I mean, it was, the Dutch put it together and then UNESCO came along with that. Next. Okay, we're progressing on the trip. These are just buildings, you want to elaborate?
Yeah, this was a little town that we spent a little time in during that day. The building on the left, I wish I had the side view up here, but what was interesting about it is it leans toward the street some. And we were told the reason it is that way was because it had wood, and it was to protect it from the rain, so that the rain wouldn't soak into the wood. And so it was just slightly toward the street. The one in the middle is the old city gate. that went to the city. And I just thought it was interesting that on the right, that is where the women's Tour de France is going to start August of this year. Next month, they will start the women's Tour de France there.
Now, most of us have never heard of the women's tour. But yes, sorry. Next slide. Okay,
This
another
is one of
town.
my favorites.
Okay, elaborate on your favorite town.
Well, it's an ancient, medieval, town, that was a walled city and with, of course, canals all the way through. And it had one whole area where, only women can live, and they do live there. It used to be like a monastery, but, single women can, rent it and live there. But it was a charming place to walk around.
Yeah, we don't have a picture of what she's describing. Well, we do, but it didn't make the cut.
It's in here.
Okay, go ahead. There's another one. How do you like this for your next floating garden? This is the same area that Libby's describing.
That's as we were walking in.
Next.
Bridge.
Okay, this is downtown Bruges. And I don't know how many of you all are beer lovers. I won't ask. There's other reasons for that. But this happens to be the brewery, as the name suggests, in downtown Bruges. But there are, what, thousands of breweries all through Europe and certainly in Belgium, well, all throughout it. But this one is downtown. And what's unique about it, sometime in the last 50 years, the streets of this small medieval town got so narrow that the beer trucks couldn't get in.
Oh.
So they literally built a beer pipeline to go from the brewery to the loading docks. And it's a 2-mile pipeline. We were not exposed to it. I can't tell you whether degradation happens as you move beer through a beer. But anyway, but that was its claim to fame, is there's a 2-mile beer pipeline from this brewery, and it's some version of the Half Moon brewery. And again, in the town that you love. Next. Aha. Now this will get you both when it was done. This is
It's a Michelangelo.
Michelangelo. Okay, so remember we're talking again the late 1600s, okay?
Yeah, Madonna and Child,
Madonna and Child in a church, in fact, in this church.
Church of Our Lady.
And Michelangelo created it, never to be moved. However,
Well, first, during the French Revolution, Napoleon took it. And it did come back. And then during the Second World War, somebody else wanted it. Hitler.
you may remember Hitler collected all sorts of stuff, was going to create this, so.
And this
Wonderful
was
museum.
one that was brought back by the Monuments Men. Have y'all ever seen
Oh,
the
yeah.
movie
That's a
Monuments
wonderful
Men?
movie.
This was brought back by them.
Yeah, a number of these have been placed in some of the salt caves in Austria and southern Germany. I think this got to come from them, and it's even mentioned here, the Monuments Men.
And there's no, it wasn't damaged.
No, not to
That's
my knowledge.
amazing.
Yeah,
Not
those
to our
are
knowledge.
beautiful condition.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
The Madonna, and this is in the church there. Next.
Those marble columns are actually gorgeous.
Okay, this is my favorite city, but I'm not going to tell you what this is. This is Antwerp. Antwerp used to be for a while, was the major port in the Netherlands, or in Belgium, excuse me. But you want to talk about what this is and what this is?
Well, this wall you see there is a water wall.
It's a
And
dike.
it mainly to keep the high tides from getting into their homes and buildings. And on this wall is a poem that talks about the love-hate relationship between the people of Antwerp, the city and the river. And it's about a mile long, the poem is. But this goes around the city to keep the high tides out. Now, all of these other buildings are guild buildings for the guilds. And the one in the center is the guild of the,
Meat cutters.
yeah, the butchers, the butchers. And they were the richest guild and they had their own cathedral or their own church. And the architecture is Gothic bacon.
Huh,
Now, whether the bacon was extrapolated, here's a better picture.
Because it looks like-
Extrapolated from what they did for a living, I have no idea.
oh.
It also has the striped appearance
Uh-huh.
to make it.
Yeah,
Exactly,
that's right.
Main
Gothic bacon, that's what they call it.
How tall is the wall?
You're talking about that had the point on it.
It's not,
Comparison to the vehicles there.
I guess about,
It's
no,
not
it's
that
not
tall.
that big.
No,
No, it's
3 or
not.
4 feet.
Well, it's there, it runs along. I mean, it's not the first barrier from the river. Of course, rivers rise and fall during the rainy
Right.
season, et cetera. And we weren't in charge of designing it either, so.
And then in that one, the one on the right is there's a castle right outside that wall. And that is an ancient wall that was around the castle. And then we're walking in, this is just right by that bacon, Gothic bacon. And that is where the old city wall was there in medieval days. You can see in the middle picture there.
And then that's new construction on the right.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Well, new is a relative statement. of course.
Wow.
But again, we're in Antwerp, Belgium, is where we are now. Next.
In one of the churches there are 4 huge cryptics that Rembrandt painted. They are terribly large. This is just one of them.
I'm trying to turn the light off here without success. Anyway, did you say this was Rubens?
I'm sorry, I said Rembrandt, Rubens,
Yeah,
and there's 4 large,
and they each have something to do with the crucifixion, this taking Christ off the cross. See in the background, the cross. Again, Rubens' version of it. It's a little different from what we usually vision it, but that doesn't surprise any of us. Okay, go ahead.
and we also visited the Red Star Line Museum.
Right, and let me back up and elaborate a little. So we're in Antwerp, seaport, and the Red Star liner here that you see operated from about 1870 to 1923. And it was a principal way that Eastern Europeans immigrated to the United States. It's mind-boggling, even in the era we live in, between 1870 and 1920, 30 million people immigrated from Eastern and Central Europe to the United States. To the United States in that time frame. And of course, those are where people came from the Midwest, all the Polish jokes came from people who came from there, mostly Central and Eastern Europeans. But their way out was to take the train from whatever their starting community was to Antwerp. And I'm going to show you some more pictures here in just a minute. Get on this Red Star line, and there was a first class and there's a third class kind of thing. Do you want to say anything else that we'll talk about? One of the people who did come across, anybody recognize that?
Yeah.
It's kind of impossible not to, isn't it?
And the one on the left is Irving Berlin. They came to escape persecution because of them being Jewish.
Right, even starting in the 1870s and obviously in the later. And then this is one of the typical ships, and I'm going to show you a little more detail, the red line saying, and that obviously the more money you had, you lived upstairs, same as tourist ships now. Kind of next picture. Okay. Really important concept that where was the main entrance to the United States if you came in on the Atlantic side?
New York.
But more specific,
Statue of Liberty.
no. Ellis Island.
Oh,
Yeah, these people were all processed in Ellis Island. These are the things that with their ID card. So that says staff if you can't see it. This says first class, second class, third class, and that was based basically on how much you paid to get across. The importance of that was these people, the US in Ellis Island, they screened you for health reasons. In other words, if you got to Ellis Island and were in essence unhealthy or thought to have tuberculosis, they sent you back home. So the cruise company had to bring you back. So they did all sorts of screening in Antwerp to do this. If
They
you can't,
disinfected you.
yes, and disinfected you 2 or 3 times. If you were third class, you got scrutinized at Ellis Island very severely, everything. If you went first or second class, there was no, if I understand it right, health screening for you through Ellis Island. Rank has its privileges, is that what they say?
But they took their clothes and all of their, put them in these big machines. And then they had this stuff, they steamed them and then they sprayed.
People.
Yeah. Before they even got on the ship.
So the whole point being, this is just one, how immigration, remember so much of immigration that here we're talking about, then later the Chinese, of course, were coming across in the Pacific, but this is the Atlantic folks. But depending what ID cards you had, that's how much you were scrutinized. If you can see, third class was green, very limited. Second class was the blue, I think, and the first class was red. I don't know how much the difference or what the passage was, but the big message, what a thing you were just totally undertaking. Can you imagine? Well, it's no different from refugees leaving places now. On to the next. What would you take to America if you were immigrating?
Whatever your skill was.
Right on, you're right on track. You're exactly right. This happens, I don't know, but obviously somebody who worked with wood, lawn, some type of trees of wood, but the point is that he put that in his backpack and toddled off to the US. Just as an illustration. I mean, you and I, at least, I'm sorry, I had no concept of what an incredible decision it would be to make something like that, or is happening in Central America consistent. Next slide. Anybody old enough to remember the anybody old enough to remember the 1958 World's Fair?
Yes.
oh, yeah.
In fact, that's the year I graduated from high school, in fact, you
This is Brussels, as it can say. That was the marker or the symbol, what you say, so the symbol
Antonio.
of the 1958 World's Fair.
Right, it was built.
The theme of the World's Fair was evaluation of the world to be evaluation of the world to be a more human world. They were concerned about, the tasteful use of atomic stuff. They were increasing their faith in technology and scientific progress. And that's where, and these represent atoms, therefore the name. Benar, I think it's supposed to be
It's a crystal molecule is what that is.
and had the world's fastest elevator.
Oh. Add a little bit, because we lived over there in
Scott, speak up just.
1961. I rode those escalators from each center of those malls there. We were living in the Hague and had a trip to Belgium. And so that was a very, very unique situation, and it was almost empty at that time. When off hours, I can't remember, I was in 8th grade. But anyway, we got to ride and the man, the porter that was showing us, we went up each one, we weren't sure, did we go up there and we would go up down there.
Oh my
Like
God.
family.
And those are escalators?
Big, each one of those were huge, long escalators
Oh,
going
wow.
out into those center areas, which were then the exit, all the exhibits and stuff were
Wow.
in there.
Okay.
It's much larger than you think looking at it. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, some of you on Zoom may have missed a little bit, but see, Carol lived there 60 and played inside there.
Gail, did you have a question?
Okay, go on to the next. Thank you. Aha! Comes to the modern world, it's changing. This is the world's first indoor mall, again in Brussels,
47.
1847, and the basic structure is still there, as you can see. But this is the world's first indoor mall. The width of them wasn't quite as much as you like, but other than that. But thought you would be interested to see that the world's first indoor mall.
Yeah.
Next.
This is the
All right,
most famous.
First, you see what you got to think down what he's doing, what it is. This is a statue in the public square.
Oh, yeah, he's just off the public square. It's the most visited statue in Brussels. It's been there since 1618,
Wow.
and it's called the Mannequin Bis. It's a little boy. And there is a story behind it. Do you want to tell the story?
Well, the way they told the story to us, to be believed perhaps, is in the 1600s, there was wars, there always was in Europe at that point, and a bunch of gunpowder had been assembled to blow up one of the walls, obviously by the enemy, and you light a fuse, of course, for gunpowder. And this little boy peed on the gunpowder fuse and put it out and saved the city.
Oh, great story.
How tall is his statue?
It's not very long, it's not very big.
That's about as probably as true as the one about the finger of the dike.
I was gonna ask about that.
But truly, that's why that's the truth, that's the story as they told it. And again, an iPhone camera.
Yeah, it's the most visited place there.
Go ahead.
And we went to a chocolate factory.
Okay, this you have to see. This is, for those you don't know, this is
You brought
Kevin.
samples.
Yes, with samples, and we all did. But we went to a chocolate making factory, and this is Carol Bowes.
Nathan.
And, oops, go back, because you're gonna run the video. And watch.
They called this, though she's filling the little squares, and they called them filling pralines. We think of pralines as something else, but anyway.
Yeah, we'll stop talking. Can you run it one more time? It may not project.
Oops.
Oh, yeah.
He's giving her instructions.
You wanna give someone else a chance?
And you didn't have to pay extra to star in that at all. But lots of Belgian chocolates. Quickly before we run out of time, next. Aha. Not to push the company, but we traveled on the top tour, and they are there on boats and stuff. It was really first class. This is on the top of the deck of the ship. Who's the lady here? I don't remember.
That's Beck. With her Diet Coke.
It's not a dark.
It's the Diet Coke, always.
They kept giving her these little glasses about this big, and so we conjured up the idea that how about something worthwhile.
That was this way.
But I thought that was the-
Well, it's a Diet
This is the last.
Oh, okay.
yeah, now this resembles beer, but
I think that's beer.
anyway, next. I
It's the
think
last
that's it.
slide.
Oh, well, real quickly, because of the levels and stuff, we went through probably at least 5 sets of locks. Once you look here, where this is the lock that opens out onto the North Sea, the sun setting, make note of the wind, all the wind turbines that are there. But to give you an idea, this is how much you would go up and down as you went from one lock. Would come in, and then they fill up with water and then open it up, kind of thing. Next, I think is it.
Yep.
Oh, there's the final book.
Yeah.
Now, before we quit, I need to thank Meredith for putting all this together. We came up with the idea. She is the technical team
We opened.
behind our faltering efforts. And again, would like to thank Frost for inviting us in. You have something that you have put out in there in the back, Joanna? What's all?
Yeah, just some mini cupcakes and some information. If anybody needs one of these, this is
Mark.
this is a great resource, please take them.
That's the newest one, right?
Yes, hot off the press, and for anyone that is a village member, please attend the village summit. It is available online. But what they're trying to do is gather information from villages across the nation about aging in place and what's important to you in conjunction with Rutgers University. So there's that, and then an issue, the latest issue of Seniorific News linking health research with primary care. It's an interesting article.